Hi, this is my midterm presentation. The paper I recreated is Poor Health, Strain, and Substance Abuse by Jason Ford. And his research questions are looking at whether poor health is related to psychological distress and substance abuse. He's relying on Agnew's general strain theory, which says some of us internalize strains, and when our negative emotions get high, we respond to those by acting out in deviant or criminal behavior. So his strain in both research questions is poor health, and then he's looking at whether it's the psychological distress that's leading to the substance abuse, or whether substance abuse is kind of a coping mechanism for the psychological distress or not. The data set for my paper is the 2011 National Survey on Drug Use and Health public data set from 2011. The sample I used in my project was just over 3,500, which was smaller than Ford's sample of 3,800, and I used list-wise deletion. So my dependent variables were all coded 0 for no, 1 for yes. Heavy drinkers were those who had 5 or more drinks on the same occasion on 5 or more days in the last 30 days. Marijuana use was if you had used marijuana in the last month. Prescription drug use in the last month, which included like pain relievers, sedatives, tranquilizers. Other illicit drugs was if the respondent had used cocaine, crack, heroin, hallucinogens, ecstasy, methamphetamines in the last 30 days. My independent variables are negative health conditions scale for those who had received a diagnosis from their doctor in the last year. And this was a sum scale from 0 to 8. Then the next one was an overall health variable with 5 being poor health and 1 being excellent health. This came right from the survey question. And then a psychological distress scale that was coded. I coded a sum scale of K6 questions up to 24. And then I dichotomized that scale for 0 was 12 or less and 1 was 13 or more. And the control variables are age, gender, race, income, population density, education, employment, marital status, and health insurance. So the descriptive table, looking at just my dependent variables and key independent variables, 9.7% of my sample engaged in heavy drinking, over 12% in marijuana use, 3.4% in prescription drug misuse, and 1.94% in illicit drug use. The negative health conditions, the mean was 0.3. Overall health, the mean was 2.18, and psychological distress was 7.14%. This table has a lot of information on it, but health conditions were positively related to age, being a male, being lower income, less educated, being unemployed, being single, not having health insurance, and marijuana use, prescription drug use, and other illicit drugs were also related. Having worse overall health was related to being younger, being male, having a low income, being less educated, unemployed, single, and then marijuana use, prescription drug use, and illicit drug use. So my next table was a logistic regression, and here in the first model, marijuana use was related to negative health conditions. So 6% of those with more negative health conditions were more likely to use marijuana. In my second model, I added psychological distress to that negative health conditions scale, and we see that those who have some serious psychological distress are more likely to be heavy drinkers or use marijuana, with 28% being a heavy drinker and 60% using marijuana. Same table, just the second half of it, breaking it up so it's easier to read. Having negative health conditions was significantly related at the 0.01 level to abusing prescription drugs and other illicit drugs. When we add psychological distress to the model, we see that those with serious psychological distress are 208% more like 208% more likely to abuse prescription drugs compared to those with less serious psychological distress, and 148% more likely to abuse other illicit drugs compared to those with better mental health. So, my last table, in this table I found that having worse overall health and having serious psychological distress was significantly related to being a heavy drinker. You can see the significance is it was also significantly related to increased marijuana use. And then when we look at prescription drugs and other illicit drugs, we see again having worse overall health is significantly related to abusing, having worse overall health significantly related to other illicit drugs. When we add in the psychological distress, we see that those with serious psychological distress and worse physical health are 170% more likely to abuse prescription drugs and 128% more likely to abuse other illicit substances. So some short, quick conclusions are that negative health conditions and poor overall health are significantly related to strain. In this paper, psychological distress. Table 3 demonstrates that substance abuse is significantly related to psychological distress, but the results are a little less clear for those negative health conditions. Table 4 demonstrates that respondents with worse physical health are at an increased risk of all 4 types of substance abuse, and that psychological distress is also significantly related to all types of substance abuse. So overall, my findings were a little different than Ford's because all of my independent variables were significantly related to substance abuse. Alright, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you so much.